long after the city's clamor had subsided into a late afternoon lull. The high-rise apartment tower on Lincoln Boulevard still hummed with the everyday rhythms of urban life. Cars rushed below, distant sirens flared occasionally, and the hum of air conditioning units provided a constant backdrop of mechanical hush. Somewhere high up, on the 16th floor, lived a petite woman named Teresa Fay and her stout, devoted Pitbull named Cinder. At first glance, the building appeared like any other modern high-rise lobby with sleek marble floors, a row of lettered mailboxes, and an elevator that chimed softly each time the doors slid open. The hallways on each floor were wide, lined with uniform doors whose brass numbers reflected the fluorescent lighting. Yet behind apartment 16C's door, a quiet warmth thrived, a home bustling with gentle energy. Teresa, pushing 30, had inherited the space from her late aunt. She also had a toddler nephew, Milo, who visited regularly, especially after Teresa volunteered to babysit him while her sister juggled multiple jobs. Cinder, Teresa's companion, had come into her life unexpectedly 3 years earlier. At that time, Teresa found herself volunteering briefly at an animal shelter. While many potential adopters overlooked pit bulls due to lingering stereotypes, Teresa was drawn to the calm steadiness in Cinder's brown eyes and the subtle wag of her tail whenever someone showed kindness. The dog, with a broad chest and soft gray coat, carried the physical hallmarks of her breed, but none of the aggression some people feared. After an initial trial fostering, Teresa made the adoption official. From that point onward, Cinder accompanied her everywhere, on elevator rides to the park, errands around the block, and lazy afternoons in the apartment's small living room that overlooked the city's sprawl. On a balmy summer afternoon, Teresa's sister, Kaylee, dropped off Milo for a few hours. The toddler, just over 2 and bursting with curiosity, tottered in with a grin. Wearing overalls decorated with cartoon dinosaurs, Teresa greeted him with a gentle embrace. "Hey, buddy, let's play quietly today, okay?" she said, mindful of how sound traveled in the building's corridors. Milo responded with a mixture of babble and squeaks of excitement, stomping his little shoes on the hardwood floor. Meanwhile, Cinder approached, tail wagging in slow arcs. The dog lowered her head, letting Milo pat her muzzle. Enthralled by the toddler's giggle, Kaylee kissed her son goodbye, promising to return by dinner time. Teresa, promising to text if anything arose, locked the door, turning her attention to Milo, who was already toddling toward the coffee table stacked with picture books and crayons. "Okay, little guy, let's keep you and Cinder occupied," Teresa said cheerfully, pulling out a coloring book. She felt that familiar wave of gratitude for Cinder's calm presence. This dog had a knack for guiding Milo away from trouble, gently blocking the toddler if he wandered too close to breakables or cords. More than once, Teresa had found Cinder quietly herding Milo away from precarious corners of the apartment, as though taking up the role of a silent, four-legged babysitter. That day began ordinarily enough. They spent time on the living room rug, coloring pictures of animals while Teresa sipped iced coffee. Cinder reclined beside them, occasionally lifting her head when Milo squealed or dropped a crayon. Outside, the sun blazed, heat shimmering in the distant haze of rooftops. Teresa flipped on the air conditioner, grateful for the unit's low hum. She didn't notice any sign of trouble. Yet, as the afternoon wore on, a subtle tension built in the apartment, one entirely unnoticed by the human occupant. Cinder, halfway through a doze, suddenly lifted her head. The pitbull sniffed the air, ears tilting. Teresa, too engrossed in helping Milo piece together a puzzle, barely glanced over. The dog let out a low, short whine, rose, and paced to the window. She stared at the glass, behind which the sprawl of the city extended. Traffic glinted below, no storms threatened, no alarms rang, yet something unsettled Cinder, though Teresa didn't sense it. She simply beckoned the dog back. "Cinder, it's fine, sweet girl," she murmured. The dog, tail wagging uncertainly, returned and settled again. Milo offered her a stuffed toy as if to say, "No worries here." Toward mid-afternoon, with the sun angled across the living room floor, Teresa decided to water her balcony plants. She slid open the glass door that led to a tiny balcony, scarcely large enough for 2 chairs. The wrought iron railing overlooked Lincoln Boulevard below, offering a scenic view at night, but it also stood as a potential hazard for a curious toddler. Ever cautious, Teresa normally locked the door when Milo was around, letting him out only under her close supervision. She had every intention of being watchful this time too. She propped the door open briefly to lug the watering can in and out, ensuring the child remained in the living room. Milo, absorbed with building blocks, seemed content. Cinder, however, grew restless again, as Teresa stepped out to water a small row of potted herbs. The dog hovered near the threshold, whining softly. "What is it, girl?" Teresa asked over her shoulder. The Pitbull let out a low bark, stepping forward as if to physically block the toddler from crossing the living room. Confused, Teresa sighed. "Cinder, relax, we're just watering the plants." She looked back at Milo, who indeed was still by the coffee table, stacking blocks. The dog's agitation felt unwarranted, but the phone rang from the kitchen. Distracted, Teresa hurried inside to grab the handset, an old landline she kept for emergencies. The cable kept it tethered to the wall. She recognized Kaylee's number and picked up. "Hey," she greeted, stepping a few paces away for better reception. "Everything all right?" Kaylee explained she might run late. Teresa assured her that Milo was fine, though she kept half an eye on the living room. The toddler still babbled to himself. Blocks tumbling, Cinder paced between the open balcony door and Milo, unsettled. In that single moment of distraction, life can pivot toward the unthinkable. Milo, in typical toddler fashion, grew bored of blocks. His eyes flicked to the open balcony door. His curiosity piqued. Without Teresa noticing, he toddled across the living room, drawn to the lure of open air. The subtle wind in the distance, the wide sky, everything beckoned to his sense of exploration. He didn't see the danger in that narrow ledge or the slats of the railing. He simply saw something new to investigate. Cinder let out a sharp bark, bounding forward to block him. Milo, startled, stumbled backward, but determined. He circumvented the dog, weaving around the coffee table. The Pitbull barked again, this time louder, a clear note of alarm that echoed off the apartment walls. Teresa, phone to her ear, froze mid-sentence. Kaylee's voice crackled. "Teresa? Is that Cinder? What's happening?" Teresa's stomach lurched. "I'm not sure," she mumbled, eyes snapping to the living room. She saw Milo edging toward the balcony door, Cinder trying to intercept. Dropping the phone, she bolted forward, but toddlers can be deceptively quick. In a blink, Milo slipped past Cinder's protective stance. The dog whined, then sprinted after the toddler, determined to block him. By the time Teresa crossed the short distance, Milo had stepped out onto the balcony, small hands gripping the wrought iron bars. The city yawned below him in a heart-stopping, 16-story drop. Teresa's heart hammered so fiercely she thought it might burst from her chest. Cinder, pressing against Milo, tried to herd him away from the railing. The toddler, oblivious to danger, giggled at the dog's attempt, taking an unsteady step sideways. A single slip, a moment's misstep, and he could topple over that rail. Terror knifed through Teresa. She lunged, voice strangled. "Milo, no!" The dog barked repeatedly, as though urging the child to back away. In that split second, Milo lost his balance, foot slipping on a damp patch of tile where Teresa had spilled a few drops of water. He swayed, arms flailing. A jolt of horror shot through Teresa. But in a flash, Cinder moved. She lunged forward, wedging her body between Milo and the railing. The toddler fell sideways against the dog's broad back. His precarious shift prevented from carrying him over the edge. The jolt forced them both to the floor, Milo landing with a soft thud on the balcony tiles, shielded from the metal bars by Cinder's frame. Teresa, breath caught in her throat, closed the final steps, scooping Milo into her arms. The child blinked, startled, and then burst into tears, scared more by the sudden fuss than any sense of actual peril. Tears streamed down Teresa's face as she clutched him, mind reeling with the near miss. She could barely stammer out a "thank you" to Cinder, who gazed up, panting anxiously. The Pitbull's ears lay back, as if the dog, too, registered the close call. Legs trembling, Teresa retreated into the living room, carrying Milo. She slammed the balcony door shut, fumbling with the lock. Heart thundered in her ears. She sank onto the couch, hugging Milo so tight he squirmed in protest. Cinder circled them, whining, muzzle pressing into Milo's tiny feet. The toddler, tears drying, stared at the dog, then at Teresa, possibly confused about the seriousness of the moment. A beep from the phone on the floor reminded Teresa she'd dropped it. Kaylee's distant voice called out, "Teresa? Teresa, are you there?" With Milo on her lap and Cinder watchful at her side. Teresa snatched the handset. She croaked into it, "I'm here. Oh God. Kay." Milo almost, but Cinder, she saved him. She tried to speak evenly, but her voice broke. Kaylee, alarmed and half incoherent, pressed for details. Teresa recounted the near fall in a rush of sobs. Kaylee gasped, promising to come as soon as possible. In the aftermath, time blurred. Teresa double-checked that balcony door, hooking the secondary latch she'd forgotten to engage earlier. Her chest hurt from the surge of adrenaline. She realized how dangerously close Milo had come to toppling from a 16th-story vantage. She recalled the horrifying image of him leaning past the railing. Nothing but open air beyond. The memory made her lightheaded. She squeezed Milo's small hand, grateful beyond measure that Cinder intervened. When Kaylee arrived, face pale, she all but sprinted to her toddler. Milo, by then calmer, brightened at his mother's presence. Kaylee knelt, hugging him fiercely, tears streaking her cheeks at the retold danger. She then turned to Cinder, who approached with cautious interest. You saved him." Kaylee breathed, voice trembling. "Thank you, you sweet dog." She patted Cinder's broad head, tears falling onto the Pitbull's fur. The dog nuzzled Kaylee's hand, tail swishing. For a moment, the entire apartment's tension was replaced by raw gratitude. Teresa, quietly shaking, recounted the entire incident. How Cinder barked before Milo even got near the balcony. How the dog physically blocked Milo from falling over the rail. Kaylee listened, hugging Milo close. She shuddered at the mental picture of a toddler's precarious tumble from such a height. "I can't imagine if she wasn't here," Kaylee whispered, voice cracking. "That dog is an angel. I swear." Milo, oblivious to the gravity, pointed at the crayons on the table. Wanting to color again, Kaylee exhaled, giving him a watery smile. "Sure, buddy," she said, though her hands still shook. Teresa felt an odd mixture of relief, guilt, and awe. Relieved that Milo was safe. Guilty for the slip of vigilance. Odd that Cinder had read the danger so swiftly. She recalled how the dog had been uneasy all day, pacing, whining. Perhaps Cinder sensed something about Milo's mood or the open balcony door. Or maybe it was an innate protective drive toward a vulnerable child. Whatever the cause, Teresa vowed to never again second-guess Cinder's warnings. She rose from the couch, retrieving a glass of water for Kaylee. "I can't believe how close it was," she said, voice hushed. Kaylee nodded, pressing a kiss to Milo's hair. For the next hour, the two sisters sat, with Milo playing at their feet, while Cinder hovered as though still on alert. They dissected every detail of the incident, Teresa's phone call distraction, the open door, Cinder's persistent alarm. Kaylee repeated her gratitude, eyes shiny with tears. "She's a hero, Teresa. People need to know pit bulls can be heroes." Teresa smoothed a hand over Cinder's sturdy back. The dog's tail wagged modestly, as if disclaiming any heroic label. Eventually, Kaylee took Milo home, deciding it was best to let him rest in a familiar environment. The toddler waved goodbye to Cinder, babbling a cheerful, "Bye-bye doggy," apparently not fully grasping his own brush with mortal danger. Once the door closed, Teresa sank onto the couch. Physically and emotionally drained, the apartment felt unnaturally quiet. With the balcony door securely locked, she stared at the glass panels, envisioning again how easily tragedy could have played out. Cinder climbed up next to Teresa, something the dog normally waited for permission to do. But at that moment, no permission was needed. Teresa wrapped her arms around the pitbull's thick neck, burying her face in the short fur. A tight sob escaped her. "Thank you," she whispered, tears dampening Cinder's coat. She wept for the tension, the fear, the overwhelming relief. Cinder stayed still, exhaling softly. Eventually, Teresa dozed off in a swirl of leftover adrenaline and exhaustion. When she woke, night was creeping in, city lights glittering far below. Cinder still lay at her side, occasionally flicking an ear at the hum of traffic. Teresa realized she needed to call Kaylee and confirm Milo was okay. She also felt the urge to tell someone else, maybe a friend, about how Cinder saved the day. Instead, she just sat there a moment longer, letting the dog's warmth ground her. Later, after a brief phone call with Kaylee, who confirmed Milo was happily munching dinner and chattering about crayons, Teresa flicked off the living room lights. Darkness enveloped the apartment, broken by the faint glow of street lamps through the blinds. She padded to the balcony door once more, checking the latch compulsively. It was locked tight. She didn't trust herself not to triple-check, especially after the day's scare. Before heading to bed, she prepared a small treat for Cinder, a piece of cooked chicken. The Pitbull accepted it gently, tail thumping. Then the dog followed Teresa into the bedroom. On nights past, Cinder sometimes dozed in her own dog bed by the TV. But tonight Teresa wanted her close. She patted the foot of the mattress. A silent invitation. The Pitbull hopped up and settled, eyes reflecting a hint of comfort. The city's hum outside lulled them both, though Teresa suspected sleep would come fitfully. She lay in the dim hush, recollecting each frantic second, Cinder's bark, Milo's lurch, the dog's body blocking that final step toward open air. The mental image left her shaky. She scolded herself for letting her guard down, but also recognized the dog had stepped in, fulfilling a protective role that, in many people's minds, Pitbulls weren't known for. This dog was no savage beast, she was a gentle caretaker. An intuitive guardian who'd recognized danger faster than Teresa herself. Though the meltdown of adrenaline weighed on her, a cautious sense of hope flickered in her heart. Maybe she'd share this story, so that others might see Pitbulls differently. Or perhaps she'd simply keep it as a cherished reminder of the day Cinder proved how love and loyalty can overshadow any prejudice. At the same time, she realized how easily a child's curiosity could lead to tragedy in a high-rise. She made a mental note to get additional safety locks or window guards. A child's unstoppable drive to explore wasn't something to underestimate. Around midnight, after hours of tossing and turning, she finally drifted into a restless sleep. Cinder, half awake, occasionally raised her head at any sound from the hallway. The dog's presence was an anchor in that swirling night. A silent promise that, if needed, she'd bark again, intervene again. For once, Teresa let herself relax, lulled by the dog's soft breathing. Morning arrived with a muted sunrise casting pinkish bands across the apartment's walls. Teresa woke to find Cinder perched at the bedroom door, looking back expectantly. They had a short routine, coffee for Teresa, a quick walk for Cinder. But today felt different, overshadowed by the near accident. The memory weighed heavily on her mind. She scrolled her phone for news. Sipping coffee, Kaylee had texted, "Milo's fine," telling everyone about the doggy who said, "No, no, no." So thankful. Teresa typed back a heartfelt reply, so relieved. "We'll fix up the balcony for next time." She felt a wave of guilt at the phrase, next time. But realistically, Milo would visit again, and they'd all be more vigilant. She closed her phone and glanced at Cinder. "Ready to walk?" The dog wagged her tail, though her expression seemed subdued, as if she too felt the day's shift in gravity. Down on the sidewalk, the city continued its usual bustle, couples walking dogs, businesspeople rushing to offices, delivery trucks idling. Teresa led Cinder on their typical loop around the block, passing the small dog park she sometimes visited. She debated letting Cinder off leash for a run, but her mind was too preoccupied. She paused at the park's chain-link fence, watching other dogs frolic. A friend waved from inside, beckoning them in. Teresa hesitated, then obliged, letting Cinder greet a few canine pals. It was typical city chatter at the dog park. Owners discussing the latest restaurant openings, complaining about traffic, or praising their dog's new tricks. Teresa, normally sociable, found herself uncharacteristically quiet. She scanned the tall buildings around, imagining a child's figure perched precariously on a windowsill. The wind a potential killer. She shook off the image, focusing on how happily Cinder sniffed around, wagging at a friendly retriever. The dog seemed as poised as ever, unaware of the mental storm Teresa wrestled with. One of her acquaintances, a woman named Naomi, asked if she was all right. "You seem a bit shaken," Naomi noted. Teresa forced a small smile, eventually sharing the story and hushed. Halting detail. Toddler. Balcony. Near fall. Pitbull hero. Naomi's eyes widened in alarm, then softened with relief. Thank God for your dog, she breathed, patting Cinder's side. Wow, that's terrifying. I'm so glad everything turned out okay. Hearing it spoken aloud to a friend made Teresa's chest tighten again, but also eased her guilt. Sharing the narrative felt cathartic, a release of tension. She walked home with Cinder feeling a flicker of pride at the dog's new label, hero. Yet part of her balked at calling it that. Cinder simply acted out of innate protectiveness. Hero or not, the outcome was a grateful aunt, an unharmed toddler, and a quiet reminder that the city's everyday routines could hide sudden, life-threatening dangers. Back at the apartment, Teresa systematically child-proofed every potential hazard. She installed a second latch on the balcony door, placed a baby gate in the hallway to prevent Milo from wandering when her back was turned, and stuck bold stickers on the windows to deter the toddler from messing with them. As she hammered the final screw into the door's new latch, she thought of how Milo's curiosity had nearly spelled disaster. She cast a look at Cinder resting near the couch. We're set now, she murmured, but I'll never ignore your warning signals again. In the following days, Kaylee returned with Milo, each time expressing new layers of gratitude for Cinder. The toddler, unwittingly drawn to the dog's side, might pat her broad head, babbling, good dog, good dog. Kaylee sometimes brought a small treat for Cinder, from squeaky toys to special dog biscuits shaped like hearts. Observing how the Pitbull gently accepted them, tail wagging in a subdued pattern, made Kaylee smile. People need to see this, she said once, snapping a photo of Milo hugging Cinder's neck. The dog's ears flopped in content acceptance. Eventually, news of Cinder's quick intervention trickled through their social circles. Neighbors in the high-rise who once eyed the Pitbull with caution began greeting her warmly in the hallway. An older man across the hall commented that, she's a fine dog. A compliment from someone who rarely offered words at all. A mother on the 8th floor, also raising a toddler, confided her newfound respect for Pitbulls. I used to fear them, but hearing your story changed my mind. She's amazing. In these little gestures, Teresa found solace, though the memory of Milo leaning over the railing never fully faded. Each time she glimpsed the balcony from the corner of her eye, her stomach clenched. She triple-checked locks and reminded Kaylee to keep a close watch. She also noticed that whenever Milo arrived, Cinder took up a near-constant vigil, an unspoken duty to protect. If the toddler wandered too close to a door or window, the dog would whine or bark softly. Teresa found this both endearing and haunting, a living reminder of how easily disasters could bloom from everyday routines. Meanwhile, city life continued. Subways rumbled underground. Shops opened at dawn. Lights twinkled across the skyline each night. Teresa resumed her job schedule, working from home part of the time. Cinder, never far from her side, provided comfort on stressful days. When Milo visited, the days felt busier, the dog's watchfulness intensifying. Kaylee, juggling shifts, would pop in, always showering Cinder with praise. You're the best dog, she'd say, scratching the Pitbull's chin. Cinder responded with a humble wag, as though disclaiming heroism. One weekend, Kaylee suggested a small gathering in Teresa's apartment, a sort of thank you get-together for Cinder's heroic act. Albeit modest, they invited a handful of close friends, plus some neighbors from the building. Teresa initially felt shy about calling it a party for a dog, but Kaylee insisted it was more about celebrating life, about acknowledging the near miss that could have shattered their family. So one Saturday afternoon, they set out finger foods, drinks, and a quiet corner for Milo to play. They displayed a single, thank you, balloon shaped like a paw print, which made Milo laugh. Cinder, seeing guests arrive, greeted them politely, tail wagging. Many approached with teary exclamations of, I heard what happened, so glad Milo's safe. They patted Cinder's head, calling her a hero. The dog, as usual, took it all in stride. Some mentioned they'd once been wary of pit bulls but changed perspective after hearing this rescue story. Others, who already loved dogs, reveled in how an underdog breed broke stereotypes. For Teresa, it was heartwarming, if a bit overwhelming. She recognized that the day belonged to Cinder, who had proven courage in a crisis. But the dog's calm acceptance of fuss only reaffirmed what Teresa already knew. Cinder was driven not by heroics, but by love and protective instinct. Midway through the gathering, Milo, dressed in playful overalls again, clambered onto the couch. Near where Cinder dozed, the toddler pressed a stuffed dinosaur into the Pitbull's front paws. The dog sniffed it, tail gently tapping. An onlooker snapped a photo at that moment, a toddler grinning, a Pitbull resting, a stuffed dinosaur bridging the innocence of childhood and the loyalty of a watchful companion. Teresa, glimpsing the camera's flash, felt tears threaten. The image captured a truth more powerful than any cautionary tale, that a child, a dog, and a precarious situation could result in unwavering faith in each other. Later that evening, after guests departed, Kaylee and Milo lingered. Teresa insisted on sending them home with leftover snacks. The sisters stood by the door, reflecting on how the near disaster had brought them closer. Kaylee knelt beside Cinder, hugging the dog's thick neck. "I know you're just being you," she whispered, tears in her eyes, "but thank you for saving my son." She kissed the top of Cinder's head. The Pitbull blinked warmly, as if in quiet acceptance. Milo, only partially aware of the emotional undercurrent, patted the dog's flank and squeaked out, "Bye-bye, dog," as Kaylee led him away. Once they were gone, Teresa sank onto the couch, letting out a long breath. Cinder hopped up beside her, nuzzling her shoulder. The hush of the apartment felt both soothing and bittersweet, a world away from the tension of that fateful day. Soothed by the dog's warmth, Teresa allowed herself a moment of reflection. The city glowed outside the windows. Tall buildings lit up like galaxies. High-rise living had its wonders, but also its hidden perils. She'd almost faced the worst, and only a vigilant Pitbull separated them from heartbreak. They say in cities, people live stacked upon each other, hearts beating in close quarters yet often strangers. But in Teresa's small slice of that vertical realm, trust had been forged. Neighbors who'd once eyed Cinder uneasily now understood the dog's quiet heroism. Kaylee and Milo's bond with the dog deepened, forging a familial sense of safety. And Teresa, every time she glimpsed the new childproof latch on the balcony door, thanked fate that Cinder's unspoken warnings had not gone unheeded. As nighttime fell deeper, Teresa switched off the living room lamp. Cinder settled at her feet, letting out a drowsy sigh. The city's luminescence danced on the walls, a silent testimony to the thousands of stories unfolding in windows above and below. In apartment 16C, that day had ended in relief, not tragedy. Thanks to a Pitbull's unwavering vigilance, Teresa understood more than ever that the simplest acts, an anxious bark, a quick intervention, could shift the course of lives perched precariously on the edge of tall windows and quiet warnings. The next morning, dawn's light fell across the high-rise's glass facade, bringing a subdued warmth to apartment 16C. Teresa roused from a shallow sleep, the memory of Milo's near fall replaying in her mind's eye. Morning traffic droned below, a steady lullaby to the city's early risers. Cinder, her Pitbull companion, stretched on the rug, ears pricking at any faint corridor noise. After the tension of the previous day's gathering, the apartment felt unusually calm, a calm that reminded Teresa how close tragedy had come, and how swiftly Cinder had intervened. She rose, filled a bowl with dog food, and flicked on the morning news. The anchor droned on about construction delays and upcoming weather. No mention of any child's narrow escape. Of course, their crisis was personal, overshadowed by the city's countless stories. Cinder padded over to nuzzle Teresa's leg as she poured coffee. "We're okay," Teresa murmured, though an undercurrent of anxiety still pulsed. She felt perpetually on guard, double-checking the balcony latch, scanning for hazards in a space she'd once found so ordinary. For a brief moment, her phone buzzed with messages from neighbors who heard about the Pitbull hero. A man on the 8th floor asked if she was open to a quick chat. He ran a small community blog and wanted to share positive Pitbull stories. Teresa hesitated but eventually agreed, figuring a local perspective might help shift breed stereotypes. She'd arranged something once Milo was safely with Kaylee or absent. No sense in upending his routine further. She left for work mid-morning, locking up and leaving Cinder to her usual doze. But not before a lingering sense of unease nagged at her. The dog gave a quiet whine as Teresa shut the door, an uncommon reaction. Typically, Cinder just watched or lay down. Teresa paused, gently ruffling Cinder's ears. "I'll be back soon, girl." She chalked up the dog's whine to post-stress from the near accident. Yet it left Teresa unsettled all day. The day's tasks at her marketing firm blurred. Co-workers asked if she was all right. Apparently word traveled that she had a scare at home. She gave vague assurances. Her mind kept drifting to how easily high-rise living could morph into a hazard for unsuspecting toddlers. She pictured the sliding balcony door and recalled Cinder's frantic bark. A coworker, noticing her distraction, teased that she should pen a PSA about dog guardians for the company's internal newsletter. She forced a weak laugh, not entirely opposed to the concept. After clocking out early, she hurried home, uneasy about leaving Cinder so long. As she exited the elevator on the 16th floor, she heard a neighbor's door open, a young father with a small child in tow. The toddler squealed at the sight of a dog stepping off the elevator behind Teresa. The father grimaced, then relaxed upon recognizing it was the Pitbull from 16C. Sensing the shift, Teresa plastered on a small smile, gave a polite nod, and continued. She recalled how many neighbors once shot suspicious glares at Cinder. Now, some gave her respectful nods, hearing of her protective acts. Inside the apartment, everything appeared normal. Cinder rose, wagging, relieved by Teresa's return. They shared a quiet evening. Kaylee texted to say Milo was faring fine, though the boy now pointed to their second-floor balcony at home and declared, "No, no, dogs say no," a comedic retelling of events that, for them, felt harrowing. Teresa half smiled, hugging Cinder, grateful Milo's perspective was so innocent. A couple of days later, the man from the 8th floor, Carter, knocked on Teresa's door. Holding a small notepad, she invited him in, mindful of Cinder's calm presence. Carter explained he ran a building newsletter and a small blog about city living, focusing on positive community stories. He'd heard about how Cinder prevented a tragedy and wanted to write a short piece highlighting it, especially since pitbulls get so much bad press. Teresa, though shy about the spotlight, recognized the potential. If it helps even a few folks see the breed differently, she said, "I'm okay with sharing." She recounted the close call, the phone distraction, Cinder's warnings, the toddler's unstoppable curiosity. Carter took notes, occasionally shaking his head in awe. "It's amazing," he said, "a child's life saved by a pitbull. That's something the public rarely hears." He snapped a few pictures, with her permission, of Cinder sitting politely by the balcony door, now firmly latched. The dog cooperated, peering curiously into the lens. Carter marveled at how docile Cinder looked, all bright eyes and calm posture. Anyone passing in the hallway might not realize what she's capable of, he remarked. Teresa nodded, stroking Cinder's head. "She's always had this sense, like she just knows if something's wrong. I should have listened sooner that day, but she barked until I finally paid attention." When Carter left, promising to email a draft for Teresa to review, she felt a strange sense of pride. Maybe other parents in the building or city folk in general would read it and think twice about pitbull stigmas. She also hoped they'd take balcony safety more seriously. Apartment living carried its own brand of danger, especially for kids. Days passed, and the routine steadied: work, quiet evenings, occasional visits from Kaylee and Milo. The toddler, while still playful, showed a new caution near the balcony door, glancing at Cinder as if to confirm permission before venturing close. Teresa never left it unlocked now, triple-checking each time. She found it both comforting and saddening that one near miss left such an impact on their daily life. But the risk was real, everyone recognized it. Then, one late afternoon, an older neighbor from the 15th floor approached Teresa in the lobby. "Heard your dog's quite the guardian," she said, voice wavering with age. "I've got grandkids visiting soon. Any chance you could talk to them about being careful on balconies?" Surprised, Teresa agreed, feeling a sense of informal community outreach blossoming from their ordeal. She ended up meeting the woman's daughter and grandchildren in the hallway later that week, letting them pat Cinder, explaining that high floors can be magical but also dangerous. "Cinder here saved my nephew's life." The children gazed at the pitbull in awe. nodding solemnly as their mother carefully listened. It dawned on Teresa that Cinder's role extended beyond a single rescue. In a building full of families, many might be oblivious to the hazards of an open window or low balcony rail. If their story prevented even one more accident, it was worth the vulnerability of sharing. She confided this to Kaylee during a quiet moment, who wholeheartedly supported the idea. "You're basically an ambassador for balcony safety now," Kaylee joked, but her voice held genuine approval. The blog post Carter wrote went live the following week. Titled, "A Pitbull's Quick Action Saves Toddler. Apartment 16 Sees Hidden Hero." It recounted the near fall, praising Cinder's intuition. It included a few photos of Cinder beside Teresa, the city skyline behind them. The story garnered modest attention. Some neighbors commented with words of thanks. Others asked about adopting pitbulls themselves. A friend from out of state even texted Teresa, saying she read the piece and felt her heart skip at the retelling. Alongside the positive feedback, there was a smattering of skepticism. A few online users questioned whether the dog truly sensed danger or if it was just coincidence. Others wondered if letting a toddler near a balcony was irresponsible in the first place. Teresa sighed, reminding herself that no one truly grasped the day's tension unless they'd lived it. Cinder's repeated barking and attempts to block Milo were undeniably purposeful. She'd rather focus on the good, like how many folks recognized pit bulls can be protective and gentle. In the building corridors, some residents who'd previously eyed Cinder with mistrust began greeting her by name. "Hey, Cinder," they'd say, offering a scratch behind the ears. The dog's tail would wag, forging quiet connections. It even led to a few heart-to-heart conversations with neighbors who admitted they once believed pit bulls were too dangerous. "You changed our mind," they'd confess. "Seeing how your dog acts around kids, she's an angel." Each time, Teresa felt a little wave of relief, hoping those small shifts could ripple into broader acceptance. Meanwhile, life with Milo carried on. Kaylee dropped him off for babysitting a few times a week, trusting Teresa's vigilance and Cinder's watchful presence. The toddler continued to show affection for the dog, sometimes hugging her so fiercely it made Teresa giggle. Cinder endured it patiently, as if she knew how important she was to this small child's sense of safety. Whenever Milo ventured near the glass door, Cinder followed, posture alert, ensuring no repeat scenario. One late evening, after Milo had gone home, Teresa found herself gazing out the balcony window. City lights twinkling below, Cinder stood at her side, muzzle against the glass. In the reflection, Teresa saw her own face. Pensive, she softly said, "You're my hero, you know." The dog shifted, pressing closer. Teresa thought back to that terrifying day, Milo's slip, the feeling of her heart plummeting into her stomach. She felt a shiver, grateful to stand here now. Child safe, world intact, the city's hum enveloped them. But in that silent moment of reflection, the bond between dog and human felt unbreakable. Days stretched into weeks, and the swirl of excitement over Cinder's heroism receded from daily conversation. Life resumed its rhythms. The building's communal spaces, once wary of pit bulls, began treating Cinder as a friendly fixture. Teresa, touched by the warmth, started volunteering occasionally to help families childproof their apartments if they asked, simple tasks like adding latches or installing window guards. She brought Cinder along sometimes, demonstrating how a watchful dog might alert owners to a toddler's missteps. A few residents even invited Cinder to short meet and greets, letting their own children see how gentle a pit bull could be. One morning, a building official, Mr. Song, approached Teresa with a proposition. He'd heard about her childproofing outreach and proposed a small workshop in the building's lounge on high-rise safety for parents, featuring her and Cinder. Startled by the notion of speaking publicly, Teresa nonetheless felt compelled to help. She recalled how close Milo came to falling, how her heart still pounded remembering it. If a short workshop could prevent more tragedies, maybe it was worth stepping outside her comfort zone. So a week later, on a Saturday afternoon, Teresa and Cinder stood in the lounge's modest space, facing a small group of parents, grandparents, and curious neighbors. Posters taped to the walls listed balcony safety tips, childproofing must-haves. Teresa wore a calm expression, though her stomach churned with nerves. Cinder, outfitted with a simple harness, sat at her side, tail wagging softly whenever someone arrived. Teresa opened by recounting the incident: phone call distraction, toddler's unstoppable curiosity, Pitbull's frantic warning, and the dog physically blocking the child's fall. Many in the audience had already heard bits of the story, but her first-hand account made them gasp or tear up. She emphasized that it took only seconds for a toddler to slip out. It doesn't matter how mindful you are, kids can move fast. And balconies can be fatal if left unsecured, she concluded, voice steady but earnest. She then introduced childproofing basics: extra door latches, baby gates, simple window stoppers. She encouraged watchers to trust their pets if they acted strangely. Sometimes our animals see or sense a risk we overlook. Cinder lay calmly as Teresa demonstrated how to check for a secure door latch, occasionally glancing at the crowd with mild curiosity. The children in attendance giggled or pointed at the dog, whispering about the hero Pitbull. When Q&A time arrived, a handful of parents asked about recommended childproof locks or whether certain balcony designs were safer. One father asked if Teresa felt it was dangerous to rely on a dog to protect a child. She answered thoughtfully, "Absolutely. Never rely solely on a dog. Childproofing is essential, and adult vigilance is key. But sometimes our pets become an extra set of eyes. Cinder's a help, but I'm responsible in the end." A mother, cradling a toddler on her hip, asked how Teresa overcame the Pitbull stigma. Teresa explained how she'd chosen Cinder based on temperament, training, and bonding. She shared that it was no overnight fix. It took consistent positive reinforcement and socialization. But once you see their gentle nature, especially with children, it's impossible to hold on to fear, she said, glancing at Cinder with affection. The dog responded with a slight wag, capturing the group's hearts. The workshop concluded with a small demonstration. Teresa pretended to be distracted in a scenario, letting a friend stand in for a wandering toddler. Cinder, as if recalling old instincts, whined and nudged the toddler away from the propped open door. The audience chuckled, some snapping photos. Through the light laughter, the message was clear: dogs, especially those mischaracterized as dangerous, can be unexpected guardians if properly guided and loved. Afterward, people lingered, thanking Teresa for the talk. Some asked if Cinder might be open for a quick pat or photo. Teresa obliged, feeling Cinder's calm acceptance. The Pitbull licked a couple of small hands offered in greeting. For Teresa, it was a triumphant moment of seeing fear replaced by fascination. She recalled that many who lived here had once avoided her and Cinder in the corridors. Now they viewed the dog as a trustworthy, empathetic neighbor. In the weeks following, Teresa's life unfolded with fewer dramatic shifts. She balanced her marketing job, babysitting Milo, and occasional invitations to speak about balcony safety. The memory of Milo's near accident never faded, but it ceased to consume her. If anything, it drove her to be more mindful, more prepared. She installed extra sensors on windows, shared childproofing tips with Kaylee, and donated a portion of her time to local rescue groups that championed Pitbull adoption, hoping more families might discover a Cinder of their own. Milo continued visiting, growing each day, chattering more words. He'd greet Cinder with squeals of delight, hugging the dog's sturdy neck. The Pitbull accepted it all with quiet patience, some days even guiding Milo around the living room if he started wandering, gently blocking him from the balcony door though it was locked. Kaylee would watch, eyes moist with gratitude. "We owe her so much," she said one day, stroking Cinder's fur while Milo napped. "I can't imagine losing him." A subtle turning point came one afternoon when Teresa ran into the building manager, Ms. Bryant, in the lobby. The manager wore a businesslike expression, clipboard in hand. She asked if Teresa had time for a quick chat. Concern flickered in Teresa's chest. She hoped there were no complaints about a Pitbull in the building. But Ms. Bryant surprised her by stating, "Actually, the owners of the building want to highlight positive tenant stories for our website. They heard about your dog's rescue. Would you mind if we wrote an official piece?" Teresa blinked. "You mean the building's official page?" Ms. Bryant nodded. "Yes, we do a small tenant spotlight monthly. It's usually about renovations or community events. This time, your story might remind residents to keep safe, and also show how a well-trained Pitbull can be part of that." Teresa felt warmth spread in her chest. "Sure," she said, "if it helps others be safe. I'm all for it." Thus began a short but professional interview with the building's PR staff, who snapped pictures of Cinder and Teresa in the hallway. They discussed the incident in mild detail, focusing on the childproofing measures. The piece, when published online, included quotes from Kaylee about Cinder the guardian angel, plus a small gallery of photos. A surprising wave of supportive comments followed. Some asked if the building might host a dog-friendly social event so neighbors could meet gentle canines. Others recounted their own near accidents with children and balconies. Within that tapestry of city life, Teresa felt a sense of purpose brewing in accidental activism, born from a close call. She and Cinder exemplified how bridging compassion and caution could avert heartbreak. People approached her in the elevator, thanking her for the tips. Some admitted they'd upgraded their own child safety latches because of her talk. A few, who once kept a chilly distance from Pitbulls, now let their kids share an elevator ride with Cinder, patting the dog's broad shoulders in gentle curiosity. Amid the positivity, Teresa also recognized the potential overshadow of complacency. She reminded Kaylee repeatedly that, "We can't rely solely on Cinder," and Kaylee fully agreed. Making sure Milo's visits were structured. Balconies strictly off limits unless an adult was physically present. Yet each time Milo trotted in, he sought out Cinder first. The dog's eyes brightened at the child's approach. Teresa never tired of seeing that bond. A toddler who barely comprehended how close he'd come to falling and the dog who'd literally saved him from it. Life, as it does, found balance again. The building's spurt of interest faded over time, replaced by new neighbors moving in, new city concerns dominating local chatter. For Teresa and Cinder, the memory of that near tragedy remained a quiet watermark, a point of reference reminding them how swiftly calm can turn to crisis. If ever Teresa dozed off on the couch, phone in hand, and Cinder barked unexpectedly, she jolted awake, scanning for potential hazards, but more often than not, it was just a harmless hallway noise, or a faint siren from the city's underbelly. A final coda to their story arrived unexpectedly one bright Saturday. Kaylee invited Teresa to a small family picnic in a nearby park, a green oasis amid tall buildings. Milo squealed at the idea of chasing squirrels. Kaylee promised to bring snacks, and Teresa offered to bring Cinder, hoping the dog might enjoy the open space. The park, lined with neat paths and shaded benches, bustled with families. Kaylee spread a blanket near a cluster of trees, setting out sandwiches and fruit. Teresa let Cinder sniff around, but kept her on a leash to respect any local regulations. Milo dashed about, pointing at birds, giggling at passers-by. At one point, a child from another family wandered over, curious about the Pitbull. The child's father hurried forward, caution plain in his eyes. "Is she safe?" he asked. Teresa recognized the tinge of breed anxiety. She offered a calm nod. "She's wonderful with kids. We're actually here with my nephew." She patted Cinder's side, the dog gently wagging. Hearing the mention of nephew, Kaylee beckoned Milo over, letting him demonstrate how he petted Cinder. The father watched, tension melting from his stance. "Wow," he murmured, as Milo gently rubbed Cinder's ear. "I guess it's all about the owner's training." "Huh?" Kaylee smirked. "She also saved my son's life once, so yeah. She's a good dog." The father's eyes widened in interest. Another small circle formed around them, a handful of parents gleaning details. Kaylee recounted the short version, leaving out the more terrifying specifics for brevity. Cinder, center of attention, just sat politely, soaking up gentle pats from the curious kids. After they parted ways, Kaylee exhaled a laugh. "This dog's practically an ambassador. We should get her a little sash that says, 'I saved a toddler from a high-rise balcony.'" Teresa snorted, ruffling Cinder's neck. The dog panted, tail slapping the grass. "She'd hate that sash," Teresa said. "She's not big on dress-up." Kaylee nodded, but a grin lingered. "Still, she's practically a celebrity, our city's unsung hero." Eventually, the day wound down. Milo, tuckered out, dozed in Kaylee's arms. Teresa and Cinder walked alongside them, the summer sun a gentle warmth on their skin. The city's skyline towered in the distance, spires of glass reflecting golden light. As they neared their building, Teresa wondered how many more stories like theirs remained untold, quiet acts of canine devotion that never made headlines. She felt a renewed conviction to keep telling Cinder's tale whenever possible. Not for glory, but to highlight that empathy and vigilance can emerge from unexpected sources. Even a breed so often maligned. Back in apartment 16C. After Kaylee and Milo departed, Teresa sat cross-legged on the living room rug, sifting through pictures from the picnic on her phone. Several showed Milo and Cinder side by side, their bond unmistakable. She scrolled to one older photo from months ago, Milo perched on the couch, pointing at crayons, Cinder in the background, glimpsing a day that led to near disaster. The reminder sent a chill down her spine. She quickly shut off the screen. In the hush of evening, with the city's lights flickering on, Teresa arranged a small dinner for herself, leftover pasta and a salad. She fed Cinder, who devoured her meal with typical gusto. Then the two settled, as usual, in the living room, the balcony door locked, the air conditioner humming. The swirl of traffic below was a lullaby of modern life. Teresa flicked through a favorite show on TV but found her attention drifting. She closed her eyes, letting the day's memories swirl. "You know," she told Cinder softly, "life is so fragile. One slip, one bark, that's all it took." The dog twitched an ear. As if half listening, Teresa placed a hand on the Pitbull's side, feeling the dog's solid warmth, the slow rhythm of breath. A sense of calm acceptance filled her. They had faced a terrifying moment. Cinder had faced it head-on, and emerged with a child's future preserved. Perhaps that was the essence of loyalty, seeing danger first, giving everything to protect. After months of slow revelations, the routine finally normalized. Teresa hammered new daily habits into place, like ensuring the second latch was engaged, triple-checking any hazards, and trusting Cinder's signals. Milo, older by a few months, developed sharper words. "Cinder," he'd say, patting the dog, or "no balcony," in a chirpy reminder. Kaylee and Teresa often laughed at that, but deep down, they remained grateful for the dog's presence. Some evenings, Kaylee texted old family friends about how a Pitbull had changed their perspective on city living. The praise extended beyond the building's walls, drifting across social media channels, touching hearts of random dog lovers who championed Pitbull acceptance. From time to time, a new neighbor would knock, politely asking if Teresa still did that childproof consult. She'd grin, collecting her notes and demonstrating the best ways to secure windows, or letting them meet Cinder to see how dogs react around kids. It was a slow, quiet impact, individual households, each rethinking the intersection of city architecture and child safety. And always, Cinder the calm sentinel, embodying caution in a world stacked high with potential mishaps. On a breezy Sunday, as city lights began blinking into the dusk, Teresa and Kaylee arranged another small family dinner, this time at Kaylee's place on the second floor of a different building. The sisters prepared a simple meal while Milo tinkered with blocks in the living room. Teresa brought Cinder, who perched near the door, glancing out the window from a vantage only 2 floors high. Less dramatic but still watchful. They chatted about the next steps in life, Kaylee considering a job change, Teresa possibly moving to a different city sector if rent spiked. Amid it all, Milo bounded around, squealing happily. At one point, Milo wandered near Kaylee's own small balcony door. 2 floors up might not be as lethal as 16, but still risky. Kaylee called him back. "Milo, come here," and the boy paused. Looking at the door, Cinder rose from the living room rug, letting out a mild bark. Milo, clearly recalling the lesson, froze. He pivoted and ran back to the dog, hugging Cinder's leg. The 2 sisters laughed in relief, exchanging grateful smiles that a single slip months ago turned into a lifelong caution. Over dinner, as they all relaxed, Kaylee raised a glass of iced tea in a mock toast. To Cinder, she said, grinning at the dog. Milo mimicked the gesture with his sippy cup. "Here's to never ignoring your dog's warnings," Teresa added, tapping her glass to Kaylee's. In the golden lamplight, the Pitbull wagged contently. Outside, cars whooshed by. The city thrummed with unending motion. But in that small dining nook, warmth and gratitude abounded. That night, Teresa parted from Kaylee's place, heading back with Cinder on foot since it was only a few blocks. The city's sidewalks bustled even at 9 p.m., couples strolling, cyclists weaving, the neon glow of corner stores reflecting on slick pavement. Cinder trotted confidently, tail at half-mast, ignoring random passers-by. Teresa felt a wave of pride each time someone commented, "That's a nice Pitbull," or "What a sweet dog." She'd grown used to educating people on the breed's gentle side. Now, with the high-rise story widely known in her circles, she had real proof to dispel prejudice. Approaching her own building, she observed a mother and child near the entrance, fussing with groceries. The child eyed Cinder apprehensively at first. "Hi there," Teresa greeted, pausing. The mother turned, a flicker of concern in her eyes until she recognized Teresa, who she'd likely heard about. "Is this the dog that saved a kid?" she asked. Teresa nodded, and the tension melted from the woman's face. She let her own daughter, maybe 5 years old, tentatively approach. Cinder sniffed the child's hand politely. Ears tilting, Teresa saw the mother's anxiety shift to curiosity. "She's so calm." "Wow," the woman murmured. Teresa smiled. "She's a protector by nature. She loves kids." That small conversation felt like another brick in the wall of acceptance. At last, in the quiet of apartment 16C, Teresa sank onto the couch, letting Cinder hop up too. The city lights glimmered beyond the now infamous balcony door. She gazed at it with a mix of respect and lingering fear. But mostly, a sense of gratitude. The door remained locked, a sign of vigilance. The memory of Milo's precarious step, and Cinder's fearless intervention, underscored how precious each second can be. She rested a hand on the dog's thick neck. "We're okay," she whispered, a vow to remain vigilant, to honor the dog's intuition whenever it surfaced again. Cinder responded with a small, rumbling sigh, eyes drifting shut, muzzle on Teresa's lap. Outside, the hum of cars and distant horns lulled them. No crisis battered their walls this night. No toddler leaning over railings. No phone call to distract. Just the quiet murmur of a city half asleep, sheltering countless stories in its stacked floors. And in this particular story, a pitbull's devotion had turned potential tragedy into a testament of loyalty and awareness. It wasn't an epic rescue plastered across front-page headlines, but in the hearts of those who knew, it was heroic enough to resonate beyond those tall windows and quiet warnings. Forging a safer future in a world so precariously balanced between routine and disaster.